Gunfighters, welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns and gunfighting and ammo and ballistics and defense and all manner of tactical and practical topics. The right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. Today's episode, hopefully you're going to enjoy. It's going to be on how to take that clandestine covert shot without a suppressor. Being quiet, shooting quiet without a suppressor. That's today's episode, and I hope you will enjoy it. If this is not your first rodeo here, I hope that you'll, if you haven't already, hit some stars, leave a review, and consider becoming a patron. Patrons get a lot of cool insider content. They also, if they choose to be, get to be part of an insider chat that I am blessed and humbled to be a part of, where we get to talk about stuff like this all the time. But mostly because you enjoy and believe in this show and want to support it. And if so, I am truly humbled and blessed. First of all, that you listen at all. And second, that you would want to support. And a thanks to all the patrons that already do so. With that, I'm going to plug in the bio. If you want to skip it, skip around 3 minutes and 45 seconds. And we will get into the main body of the show here. Who am I? A question we should all ask ourselves. I am, first and foremost, a servant of God, made in His very own image, a follower of Jesus Christ, a simple man called by God to the Great Commission to share the good news of Jesus Christ. Next, a little bit about my background and what God has allowed me to do and blessed me to do in life. Grew up what most would consider very poor in the backwoods of the southeastern and mid-Atlantic United States, hunting and fishing. Joined the Marine Corps at 17. Did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. So a decorated Marine Corps combat veteran. Infantry assaultman. After the combat tours, I was an urban warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. I also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. Also a veteran of law enforcement. I served with LAPD. I was a sworn peace officer, a cop for LAPD. I worked regular patrol assignments and more specialized assignments. One of those more specialized assignments was warrant service, fugitive recovery. Also had some other law enforcement roles. I am an FBI certified firearms instructor and been certified by another 3-letter government agency in a lot of firearms and training things. I've also been a private contractor, worked in the private sector, pertaining to tactics and gunfighting and protecting America from enemies foreign and domestic. I served as the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters in a large metropolitan area. That was our primary mission, to stop active shooters, which sadly are a thing in America today. I've also been blessed to do quite a bit of competition shooting. Started my first formal competitions even before joining the Marine Corps at 17. I had won more shooting competitions than I can remember. I have competed in all manner of disciplines in shooting. I've been blessed to be a state rifle and pistol champion, West Coast regional champion. Like I said, been blessed to win more shooting competitions than I can remember. Mentioned hunting. I've hunted to put meat on the table starting when I was a child. I've also been a professional big game hunter and guide, hunting and slaying all manner of beast. And I don't apologize for that. Humbled to be the host of 3 podcasts. Simple Man Sermons, Alpha Male Podcast, and Gunfighter Life. Obviously, as things not mentioned, I've been blessed to do many other things. But, again, first and foremost, I'm a servant of God, a believer and follower of the Bible, the Word, Jesus Christ. And I don't apologize for that. With that, let's transition into today's topic. So, you want to be sneaky. You want to be clandestine. You want to be quiet. For no nefarious purpose. There are totally legitimate purposes for this. Perhaps you're in an area where you need to take care of a pest, a problem, and it's totally legal for you to do so, but you don't want to be loud. You don't want your neighbors to know. It's not their business. You don't want to wake them up, alert them, bother them. Maybe you live in an unincorporated area, not in a city limits, but where you do have people fairly close by, and you might not want to wake them up at, the crack of dawn at 5 a.m. shooting varmints or taking that deer. Perhaps you just want to be able to practice, again, without being a bad neighbor, being a good neighbor. So it's totally ethical, moral, justified, and legal for you to do this thing, but you want to be quiet doing it. How about we think about some other options? Think outside the old BOX. Maybe you want to consider trapping. Now, I just recorded an entire show on trapping. I'm not sure whether I'll put it out before or after this, but trapping, if you do it right, can be very quiet. Old classic scenario, where you want to get rid of a problem rabbit or two or half a dozen that are messing up your garden. The next one, archery. Archery bows are a lot quieter than firearms are, right? And sometimes they are a decent solution and a decent answer. Whether it's your compound bow, your traditional recurve, or longbow, or a crossbow. Now, you'll know that I'm not a big fan of the crossbow for like a go-to apocalypse weapon. I think that's way overdone and overblown and impractical in all these crazy apocalyptic movies. But I think it can have certain niche applications in a scenario where you may have to take one shot, but you don't know when that shot's going to be. Crossbows have a very, very slow rate of fire. But if you only need the one shot and you don't know when it's going to be, that crossbow can stay ready. Now let's talk about some other things we may not think about, but they are quite effective. And the fact that indigenous cultures use them and have used them, and their ancestors survived to the present, mean that they are effective. I don't think they're the most practical because they require quite a bit of practice and dedication. However, sadly, maybe you live in somewhere where your rights for self-defense have been severely limited. Perhaps these are a decent option. The old classical sling and a stone, or a more modern version, a slingshot. Or I'm not talking about the little kid ones. I'm talking about like a legit wrist rocket. Also, blowguns. You may laugh at that, but I have used both slingshots and blowguns quite effectively. When I was much younger and had much more free time, I got quite good with a blowgun. And for the right size game, they can be quite effective. Again, not probably the most practical for most of us because they do require a large degree of practice, and I'm going to spend that time practicing. I'm going to practice for what's most likely. That's why I do most of my practice in dry fire with a handgun, with my carry handgun, or carry handguns, and then with a rifle and a shotgun, because there's what I'm most likely going to need. It's a lot of training you're going to need to master a blowgun or even archery. Archery is just like archery, it's a discipline in and of itself. But just know that those options are there, they do exist, and again, our ancestors used them and survived to the present, so that shows that they are effective and can be effective. If you guys are interested in that, let me know. We may do an entire show or shows on those kind of things, but today I'm mostly talking about firearms type weapons, quiet, without a suppressor. And one thing that is not considered, at least under U.S. law, I know by God's grace we do have a lot of international listeners, what I consider a lot. But here in America, muzzle-loading black powder type firearms are not considered firearms. And as such, they're not regulated as such. And so they can be suppressed, or you can have a suppressed muzzle loader without the need of a tax stamp. I do believe you could probably have it shipped right to your door. There's at least one I know of company that makes a muzzle loader with an integral, meaning permanently attached suppressor to it. It should be totally legal and be able to deliver to your door. A 50 caliber, 45, 50, 55 caliber, those type of muzzleloaders are, for one shot, quite a potent weapon. So just know that that is a thing that exists as well. Air rifles. And I'm not talking about a Daisy Red Ryder. That, by definition, is not a rifle because it doesn't have rifling. That's a BB gun. But let's talk about legit air rifles. Your classic ones were 177.177 caliber, that is. Very simple ones you would just pump to build pressure pneumatically to be stored in a chamber to release. Some of them have where the barrel actually breaks open and the action of that creates air pressure. You put a round in and then you close it. And there are much higher pressure and fancier ones with entirely separate devices to be pressed. And just like a muzzleloader is not considered a legit firearm under the ATF rules, at least as of now, neither is an air rifle. So again, this could be a good, quiet option. They make these quite powerful. But just a regular 177 caliber, or even almost as common, or the second most common, a 22 caliber air rifle. If you're talking about practice in like a suburban environment, these may be just the ticket. And one thing that separates these from like a bow or a blowgun or something like that is that the fundamentals of marksmanship should be the same if you want to become a rifleman. If you want to be good at your fundamentals, a good stance, a good shooting position, whether that's prone or kneeling or standing or sitting. You want to practice good trigger discipline. You want to, master the fundamentals. Those fundamentals are the same whether it's an air rifle or a 50 BMG. So these come in practical. Also, if you're trying to dispatch small pests or feed yourself with small animals, doves. Here in America, the Eurasian collared dove in most places is considered, again, check your legalities, an invasive species. They also happen to be quite delicious. A good 177 caliber air rifle would do well for those. But again, if you talk about more powerful things for maybe tactical type situations, there are quite powerful air rifles out there. I'm not the best expert on those. Perhaps somebody out there is and would like to be a guest on the show, but I'm not the expert. Anyway, I do believe that they are quite powerful, or have the potential to be. They also make ones that fire arrows or bolts, whatever the right vernacular is for that, but much like an archery projectile that fire out of those kind of weapons. These are quieter in and of themselves. They have some other advantages. They're fairly clean. You can cast your own lead projectiles and basically shoot very, very inexpensively. Also, since they're not considered a firearm, you can give them an integral suppressor. You can get integrally suppressed, meaning permanently attached suppressors to these kinds of weapons, and they're not regulated. So the air rifle concept is another idea. Now let's get into what you probably tuned in for, the firearms portion. And let's talk about what a suppressor is, what it does, how it works. So when a firearm goes off and that projectile leaves the barrel, a lot of pressure is released all at once. Also, a bullet may transcend that sonic barrier and create a sonic boom, which is quite loud. Both those things can be quite loud. A suppressor is basically a large, much larger than the bore diameter of the said weapon, chamber. And that chamber basically does a very simple thing. Instead of all that pressure changing at once, it changes it more gradually. And that greatly reduces the amount of noise that's created. just one big chamber or several smaller chambers with that gas moving and decelerating much more gradually. It's a very simple thing, and it's a very simple device. However, they're heavily regulated here in America. But if you understand those principles, you can do the same thing. You can shoot very quietly, and I'm not sure about all legalities in all places, but I don't think any of the things I'm going to talk about are legal in most free states in America. I'm not a lawyer. Consult a lawyer if you want to make sure all this stuff is legal for you in your area. But there's ways to achieve this same concept and principle ballistically, legally, without a suppressor, and I think that's probably what you tuned in to hear about, so let's talk about that. First of all, let's talk about that transonic barrier. In order to get past that, very simply, you have to stay under the sound barrier. Even with a suppressor, high-powered rifles, like your 308, your 223, regular bottlenecked rifle rounds are going to transcend that sound barrier. So even with a suppressor, they are quite loud. Not as loud because you get rid of some of the noise, but you certainly don't get rid of that. So in order to get rid of that, very simply, we stay below that threshold. Now this changes depending on elevation and sea level and all kinds of other things, but for a nice round number, and I know this is not exact, but it's close, let's say 1,000 feet a second is right around that speed of sound, 700 and something miles an hour. Let's say 1,000 feet a second, which is totally doable. Subsonic rounds. And we'll talk about some of those rounds that are naturally that way, or how to make them that way. And then next we have to get rid of that pressure getting released all at once. So this may be simplistic, but bear with me here. The pressure is very high initially when that cartridge gets detonated into a chamber, into a barrel. That pressure drops, and we're talking about like fractions of a second. It drops very rapidly. The longer that barrel is, the more that pressure drops before that projectile exits. You can essentially achieve the same thing a suppressor is doing by having a very long, for caliber and for pressure, barrel, where most of that powder has been burned prior, and most of that pressure has already dropped prior to that projectile leaving the end of that barrel. A classic example, we're going to start here at the small end and go big. So a 22, this might be, if you want an out-of-the-box solution in an actual firearm, this might be your go-to. And for this, the longer the barrel, it's going to be better. Which means as much as I love handguns are out. Pistols and revolvers are out for this purpose. Again, if you're getting rid of the suppressors, you want a longer barrel. If you take something like a 22 short, if you don't know, most people that refer to a 22 rimfire, 22 long rifle. There's also 22 long and 22 short. There is also something called a CB cap, or a colibri. Colibri possibly named after a hummingbird in that language, but colibri, CB caps, and 22 shorts. These have much less or no powder at all, perhaps just a priming compound. Now these are not going to have enough power to reliably cycle most semi-automatics. Now I said most, and I'll come back to that, but for the most common things, you're going to want this in a manually operated firearm. That means most commonly a break open single shot, a bolt action, a lever action, or a pump action. But you can shoot these and most things chambered for a common 22 long rifle. They will fire, and if they have a long enough barrel, even a standard barrel, a 16-inch barrel with a CB cap, they are quiet. They are very, very quiet. And since 22 firearms, 22 rifles are quite common, you have a large amount of options, unlike that integrally suppressed black powder muzzleloader, where there's like one that I'm aware of. There are who knows how many different models of 22 out there that are manually operated that this will do just fine in. In fact, this is my go-to option when I want to be quiet. I have a Savage bolt action and I have 22 shorts, and it is quiet. CB caps, 22 shorts, 22 calibres are very quiet. This allows you to use, like we talked about, 22 rifles and optics if you want. They are not expensive. In fact, you could probably get a decent 22 rifle like this for less than you could get either a suppressor or a tack stamp, let alone a suppressor and a tack stamp. So a 22 with 22 shorts, 22 calibres, or the CB caps is a good option. Again, they're probably not going to cycle most semi-automatics, so it is a manually operated gun proposition. There is at least one factory option that I'm aware of because I owned one once and I got rid of it. Perhaps I should have kept it, but I'm not a gun collector. And that is the Remington Speedmaster. It has a different design than most semi-autos. It's not being produced anymore, I don't believe, but it was for quite a while. They're not highly coveted. But they are the only semi-auto that I'm aware of that comes from the factory stamped on the gun that is capable of firing shorts, longs, and long rifles. So if you have one of these, you could have a semi-automatic, depending on how reliable that gun and the ammo is, but should be able to fairly reliably give you semi-automatic firepower in a quiet package in a firearm. Also, these are quite good with the regular standard ammo, as all these other things we talked about are. These other rifles, a 22 lever action, a 22 bolt action. So it's not just a one-trick pony, right? You can have this and use it all the time, and then if the occasion arises where you want to be quiet, you can use the 22 shorts or the 22 CB caps, maybe change your dope or confirm your dope on your rifle, just meaning the settings of the sights and things, and go quiet. I would recommend cleaning the chamber and the barrel thoroughly between switching back and forth between the different lengths of ammo, but not a big deal. There is one more option. It is not a factory complete rifle option, but it is a good one. I've never had this kit in particular, but I know Volquartsen. And if you don't have Volquartsen, this is a sidebar here, but if you don't have Volquartsen triggers in your Ruger 1022 or your Ruger Mark Series pistols, do yourself a favor if you can afford it and get those. They are worth every penny, I think, if you want a good trigger. I love the Ruger 1022, but the factory trigger is kind of lackluster, shall we say. It's kind of like going from a Mustang to a Shelby Cobra when you upgrade to Volquartsen stuff in your 22. Well, Volquartsen, which makes high-end 22 stuff, makes a 22 short conversion kit that is designed to be able to be semi-automatic and convert your classic 1022 into a 22 short firing apparatus. So you have semi-automatic capability in that common platform of a 1022. Now, unlike the other one we talked about, you're going to be dedicated, unless you change everything back over with the parts kit, to only 22 short. If you do this a lot, let's say you have a prairie dog issue and you're in a fairly developed area, and you want semi-automatic capability in a Cadillac type platform, and you want to be quiet, that Volquartsen 22 short kit may be right on the money for you. Okay, so they also do make 22 subsonic rounds, but they still have quite a bit more powder than your 22 shorts. They are designed generally to be shot on a gun with a suppressor. Now, they will be quieter in general in a rifle than, let's say, a CCI Mini Mag, but in my experience, it will not be anywhere near as quiet as a 22 short or a CB cap. Okay, so we're going to transition away from the 22 stuff now to talk about a little bit bigger things. Now, if we stick with this formula of a long barrel with a little bit of powder, you're moving outside the realm of most common rifle rounds in a rifle. But there are things like pistol caliber carbines, and I'm not talking about the 9mm 40-45 versions. Those in general are semi-automatic, and thus this won't work because the rounds we're going to talk about will not have enough power to cycle reliably. I'm talking about some of your classic pistol caliber carbines in your revolver rounds. Let's say a very classic lever action or any kind of manually operated. The first place I'm going to start here, I think, is the most versatile. Just like it is in the regular world, it's also the most versatile in the quiet world. And that's going to be a PCC. Again, the longer the barrel, the quieter. in 357. Now 357 has quite a bit of powder, but the 38 Special has less. And almost all firearms, not all, but almost all firearms that will shoot a 357 Magnum will shoot a 38 Special. Since you want to keep velocities low, in general you want to go heavy for caliber. So the heaviest 38 Special, in general, the better you're going to be. Now this is going to require reloading or knowing somebody that reloads and them showing you how to do it. I think it's illegal if somebody else reloads for you and sells you their ammo, but if you just happen to go over their house and they show you how to use the stuff and you reload your own ammo, it should be totally legal. I think. Check with a lawyer before you do that and make sure you know what you're doing so you don't blow your fingers off or blind yourself. But you can find published loads, not going off on some crazy dangerous tangent, but published loads. Let me start off by saying what not to do. You can't just take most powders and load them really, really light, meaning much less than, or really any less than what a manual calls for, because you can get very unpredictable high pressure spikes from low powder, because instead of it igniting in a controlled manner, it all ignites at once and goes up. I don't have to explain why that's really bad. But there are certain powders that you can safely load down quite a bit. A classic one is Trail Boss. There are other powders that can safely be loaded down. Again, you have to know what you're doing. You can consult with an actual manual. I would not go outside a published load. But if you do this in a published load, it's totally safe as any other reloaded ammo. Heavy for caliber with the lowest powder charge is still going to be quite a bit more powerful. You know, a 180 grain 38 Special load going at 1,000 feet a second is quite potent. Be suitable at close range for decent sized game. And it's quite versatile. Again, this is not a one-trick pony. You can have some of these rounds, you should confirm with your rifle, but inside of 20 yards, maybe even 50 yards, they should hit very close point of aim, point of impact to your regular load. So you could have, let's say, your lever action 357 with its normal load, whatever that is for you, 158 grain semi-jacketed soft point for your go-to defensive and hunting load, and you could have some of these really quiet rounds to be shot quietly out of your rifle. Totally legit, totally legal, nothing wrong with it, and trust me, they can be very, very quiet. You can do this with many other similar rounds using the same principle. Heavy for caliber, whatever that is. For a 45, that might be 300 grains. Or a 44. So you go up to that 44 Magnum, you can still shoot 44 Special. You can load a really heavy for caliber, light on powder, and again, not lighter than a published load, but a very light load with Trail Boss or some other similar powder in a long-barreled firearm, and they can be quite quiet. In fact, these loads are a lot quieter, in my experience and understanding, than most rifles are with a suppressor. And again, totally legal, no need of a suppressor, and very quiet. And let's bump that up to a 44 or 45 caliber. We talked about the 44 Special, but also the 45 Long Colt. Right, you could have a 300 grain bullet at 1,000 feet a second. That is a lot of energy. Still staying subsonic, and a very, very lethal round. You're talking high sectional density. That's a very potent and lethal round, even on big game at reasonable ranges. And again, you can use this in a totally modern firearm without a tack stamp, without a suppressor. It is quite powerful. And although not semi-automatic, with a good lever action gun, or even a bolt gun, they do make bolt action 44 Magnums and 357 Magnums, a good, reasonable rate of fire. And you can do all that with the ability to be quiet and the ability to use regular, what I would consider your normal loads. So quite versatile as well. Now, the next thing that I'm going to talk about actually sparked the thought for today's episode. And that is, you're still going to need a manually operated gun, so a bolt action, a lever action, a pump action, or a single shot break open. But the 223, there are loads, published loads that I've seen for 223 using Trail Boss. Now your normal 223 let's say 55 grain bullet out of a long barrel, let's say 20-inch barrel, the original M16 length barrel. Let's just say, and I know it's not exact, but let's say for the sake of argument, it's 3,000 feet a second. Good round number. That's going to be loud. But with a trail boss load, the velocities I was seeing was that same 55 grain bullet at around 1,000 feet a second. And I got thinking about this, thinking that may be an underappreciated and underutilized and realized survival resource. There's a big thing in the survival community about what's better, for survival, a shotgun or a 22 LR, because you can carry a lot of ammo and it's light. Well, a 223 round is often discounted because it's too powerful for a lot of small game and harvesting and stuff for survival. But if you had these trail boss loads, could load that 223 again, not in a semi-auto, not in your AR, unless you do what I'm going to talk about later, because it won't cycle and it'll probably cause pretty nasty malfunctions. But in a manually operated gun, in a bolt action 223, you could have your regular normal loads, your defensive load, whatever that is for you, your 64 grain soft point, and you could have some of these loads. Not sure if they have the trail boss loads. I haven't seen them, but I haven't really looked for 64 grain, 77 grain. If they do, that's the direction I would go. And you could load these up with the appropriate projectile bullet selection. They would be quiet, and you could take small game without blowing it to pieces and without being super loud. And then you could have your regular go-to loads, especially if you knew your different kinds of dope. Dope, again, is rifle vernacular for your rifle settings. You could mark it on your scope if you have those, modern zero-stop turrets with good positive clicks. I wouldn't do this on a budget scope. You could have your two different sets of dope. Your clandestine, soft, quiet dope, then your regular standard high velocity, full power dope for your rifle. And although these rounds are not as light as a 22 long rifle, they are quite a bit lighter than most other rounds, even lighter than the 38 specials we talked about. And you have the option to go much more powerful. So if you wanted an option to go have that one gun to be really quiet when you wanted it to, but to also reach out for longer ranges, this would probably be your most practical option. Again, in a modern bolt action rifle, I know people will get mad if I call it a scout rifle, because it's not. A scout rifle is like in 308 or a similar cartridge, a full powered rifle cartridge. If we call it a light scout and an intermediate round, you could do this with 223, maybe even 7.62 by 39, although it's not as, even that 30 caliber round might be a little big for this. But this 223 option of loading those up with those trail boss loads in a subsonic configuration with a long barrel, again, you're not going to be doing this in your pistol AR. It's just not going to be quiet, and it's not going to cycle. But in a legit rifle, in a lever action rifle or a bolt action rifle in 223, you could load these trail boss loads and have that dual option, right? You just have a magazine loaded up with these and maybe put some red tape on the magazine and take a red paint marker and mark your dope on your optic in case you have to dial to it, so you know where that your gun is going to be zeroed for that load. And for everything else, you keep it on your regular zero stop, regular dope for your regular, whatever you want it to be, 55 grain, XM193 or whatever. But you get the idea there. You get all the good stuff that comes along with the commonality and common and affordable ammo for the 223 in general, 5.56, 223 in general, and you get the option for these really light loads. Again, published loads. Don't go crazy and try and invent your own load. That's a recipe for disaster. But that's a really cool option. And again, you could do similar things with a 7.62 39 or 308 or 30-06, depending on your philosophy of use and what you want to do with it. And I mentioned the AR not cycling. Well, if you have a piston AR or another kind of AR where you can shut off the gas system, as my go-to AR has that. It has a setting where I can completely turn the gas off and it won't cycle the bolt at all. So I've basically turned my AR into a straight pull bolt action. I fire, nothing happens, I rack the charging handle, I'm ready to fire again. That rate of fire is just as fast as a bolt action, maybe faster. It's not going to cause a malfunction because I have a gas shutoff valve. There will be no gas, no measurable amount of gas to cycle that bolt backwards. I get one shot. Again, all I have to do is rack the charging handle and I have another shot. I can run these really light, quiet loads. And more than just being quiet. If that's my go-to rifle, and it's not, you'll know my go-to rifle is not an AR if you listen for any length of time. If it was going to be, and I wanted to, let's say, shoot that dove, I see a nice, fat, delicious Eurasian collared dove that's in season, and I don't just want to kill it, right? I want to shoot it so that I can eat it. These trail boss loads in an appropriate non-varmint type bullet that's not going to tear up a bunch of meat going at 1,000 feet a second is a much better choice to take that dove and eat it. So a pretty cool option there. And hopefully it's made you think maybe there are some options that you know about that I don't for shooting quietly without a suppressor that's legal. You know, if you have ideas or you have experience with this, or there's something I haven't thought of, I'd love to hear from you. The best way is to scroll down and leave a review and just write it in the review. That way myself and everybody else can see it. If you want to contact me directly and you're not a patron, you can go to goodshepherdtraining.com and just send me a message. But I hope you have enjoyed this episode on different options. Don't think because you can't have a suppressor or don't want a suppressor that all is lost in shooting quietly. You have options. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. I am very humbled and blessed that you give me part of your day today and part of your time. I know time is valuable, and I appreciate you listening. I also appreciate everybody that supports on Patreon. I should mention, because one of the current patrons is so gracious that he not only supports by being a patron, he offered up one of his knives, a really good EDC knife, a K-bar folding hunter, to be raffled off for any patrons this month, the month of November, in the year of our Lord 2022. I've been thinking about becoming a patron. That's a little extra incentive, and I would be humbled and blessed if you wanted to be a part of the tribe. With that, I want to say thanks for listening again, and as a thank you, I usually throw out a tactical tip, not on every episode, but on a lot of them. So I'm going to throw out a tactical tip here today. I may do a whole other episode on this, but I'm going to throw it out shortly. We talked about ARs briefly today, but most people listening to this probably have an AR if you're listening in America. A lot of AR pistol grips, you can get ones that have containers with a way to seal them shut on the bottom for storage. Or even just the regular old, M16, M4 type pistol grip that comes on the AR. You can literally just take a piece of duct tape on the bottom and cut around it and seal that thing off. I think there is some Line 1 gear, if you're not familiar with that vernacular, just gear that should be on the rifle at all times. ARs do break. How do I know? Because I've broken a few of them, and I've seen it. But there are some simple pieces that you probably should have and that will fit very nicely in that pistol grip. That little cotter pin, that little pin that goes in the bolt. If you're out in the field cleaning your rifle and you misplace that, having a spare one in there is far better than trying to make one out of a paper clip. That little pin is, in my opinion, one of the weak points of that rifle. But you can have a spare or two, and they take up almost no room and no space and no weight, and put it in that pistol grip. Also, extractors can be a weak point. Especially, and I don't advise this, but if you do shoot that steel-cased ammo, having a spare extractor. They're not expensive. Next time you get to the point where you've shot enough and you're ready to replace that extractor, if the other one still works, put that in there. But have a spare extractor in that pistol grip. There's other things you can put in there. If you have a optic that takes a small watch battery, a CR123 or a 1632, have a spare battery in there. And one thing I like to put in there is just one spare round. Just in case something should happen, I have that one more round. If you don't want it to rattle around in there, if the stuff is tending to rattle around in there, a tactical tip inside a tactical tip, take some cleaning patches, some of those blue shop towels or whatever you want to use, cut them up and put them in there so you have another thing. You can pre-soak those in some kind of CLP or something if you want, so you have that in there. Put them in a little plastic bag or just put the rags in there. They stop stuff from rattling around and you have another thing to help clean that rifle if you should need it. And again, that pistol grip is hollow anyway, so why not utilize that space? Anyway, that is your tactical tip of the day. And hopefully what you find more valuable than that tactical tip is the tactical verse of the day, coming at you from Proverbs 24. For by wise counsel thou shalt make thy war, and in a multitude of counselors there is safety. For by wise guidance you can wage your war, and in abundance of counselors there is victory. So don't go to war without wise guidance. Victory depends on having many advisors. Remember, we are made in the image of God. Exodus 15, the Lord is a man of war. You spend your life getting to know God better, studying God, wanting to be in a relationship and better understanding of God. Everything about you will become better. And your ability to be a warrior is included in that. Thanks for listening, men, and have a blessed day.